Hello and welcome to the third episode of short interactive sessions on relevant issues keeping in mind the 5th BIMSTEC Summit 2022. Today, the topic of discussion is, can the Rohingya issue block the development of BIMSTEC? As we know, the Rohingya crisis has been one of the most contentious issues of recent times. Due to persecutions faced in Myanmar, where the Rohingyas are considered stateless due to the Citizenship Act of 1982, these displaced people have migrated within the BIMSTEC sub-region throughout the last decade. Barring Bhutan, the Bay littorals, including landlocked Nepal, have given asylum to a substantial number of Rohingyas. Bangladesh, as of February 2022, has 9,23,179, that is the highest number of these hapless people, and is looking forward to reopen negotiations in order to repatriate the said population to Myanmar at the earliest. However, two failed repatriation efforts, unproductive dialogues, and the February 2021 coup have further delayed efforts. Rather, the displacement issue has been growing deeper post the Myanmar coup. So, what is the way ahead? To discuss this, present with me today is Dr. Robin Ramcharan, Executive Director of Asia Center. I welcome you. So, Dr. Ramcharan, moving this discussion forward, can you throw some light on what is the current state of Rohingyas living in Myanmar today?
Well, thank you very much, Sreeparna, and it's a pleasure to be with you and all the delegates and members who are attending the BIMSTEC Summit, and I wish you all much success. Asia Center is very pleased to be part of the dialogue on people-to-people connectivity with you and with all members and delegates in the BIMSTEC Summit. So, uh, with a view to pursuing and developing a values-based connectivity, it is very important as the spotlight goes very much to the Ukraine humanitarian situation that we not forget the humanitarian situation that has been, uh, ongoing for quite some time in Bangladesh and across the recipient countries who have kept uh, hosted Rohingya people. So, of course, the situation of the Rohingya people across the BIMSTEC space, if I may put it that way, is not a good one. We must commend the efforts of all host countries, and especially Bangladesh, for hosting, in difficult conditions for a developing country, so many people and trying their best. But we must also recognize that the situation is a dire one for the Rohingya people. And so there are many problems in the camps, issues of basic sanitation, of reports of fires outbreaking in the camps, uh, overcrowded conditions in very small places, spaces, and so on. On top of that, unfortunately and tragically, and literally tragically, you have the COVID situation. And of course, much uh, finances has been diverted, of course, away from, rightly so, towards the addressing the COVID situation. So we must take all of that into account. Um, Put together, it's not a healthy situation for anyone, especially the Rohingya refugees in the BIMSTEC area.
Okay. Can you throw some insight on how they are, the displaced people who are living currently in Myanmar? What is the situation of them
Inside of Myanmar,
inside of Myanmar?
yes, well, we of course have this. It's not only Rohingya. So at the moment, of course, the Rohingya in from Rakhine State and so on. That's one issue, but of course there is some much in the ongoing situation in Myanmar since the February 1 coup. First of all, this does not bode well for the Rohingya people themselves in terms of returning, and secondly. The issue of displacement of Rohingya also is an ongoing issue. And now you have the problem of the displacement of even Burmese themselves, who are in this terrible situation that we all know about. So let's hope, let's, uh, think positively and hope this, unfortunately, this protracted civil conflict, and I'm afraid it is likely to go on for some time, uh, can at least stabilize sometime soon, um, allowing people to go back to their homes. Again, we have this tragic situation on top of a COVID a pandemic that Burma, Myanmar has been. Um, Myanmar, I think, has had some difficulties dealing with it, given its infrastructure and so on.
That's correct. I think you have raised a very valid point, I think, that highlights the insecurity and the inhuman conditions of Rohingyas living in Myanmar. Not only the Rohingyas, but the other displaced communities as well. And the uncertainty of a better future around it at this moment. So, as the February 2021 coup has further complicated the potential return of more than 1 million who are currently living within the BIMSTEC sub-region. Do you think this might act as an issue of contention in the forthcoming BIMSTEC summit?
I think I think that it does not need to be an issue of contention if handled delicately. And so, of course, we all know that there are many pitfalls. But I think if BIMSTEC members uh, keep firmly in their sight the fact that they are ultimately acting to improve the lives of their respective peoples, right? BIMSTEC cannot just be about technical connectivity. It has to be about values connectivity and ultimately achieving the things that they themselves had pledged under the SDGs. And so if we keep that in sight, then one way of um, of keeping the conversation positive is to think about the humanitarian situation and to act accordingly in terms of supporting each other financially, politically, and so on. So of course, we understand the position of Myanmar. Even the very term of the use of the term Rohingya is problematic for them. Uh, these are matters that can be finessed. Keeping the ball firmly, your eye firmly on the key goals of ultimately BIMSTEC will have to reconcile itself with, um, I'm repeating myself, but this values connectivity. Without it, then what is BIMSTEC about, right? So I will just leave that thought.
I think that's a very, very valid point because if we do not take the humanitarian concerns and if we just go around with the connectivity, connectivity is also people to people connectivity. And if
That's
people
right.
do not feel safe, then this is very, very difficult. And it is going to be very difficult, I think.
That's
So I was thinking that since protected, refugiehood leads to statelessness, and since Rohingyas are already stateless people, and if you look at the BIMSTEC region, then none of the countries are a party to the 1951 Refugee Convention or its 1967 protocol. And thus, they do not recognize these individuals as refugees, but as displaced Myanmar nationals of Rakhine State. So, according to you, how can the precarity of this situation can be mitigated? Is there a way out?
right. Yes, it's an important question. Thank you. I think that, well, first of all, one of my suggestions was going to be precisely this, that please ratify that convention. Yeah. Number one, it will go a long way to at least alleviate somewhat the conditions of survival that they face. Um, Even if members of BIMSTEC are not party to the convention, I think it is worth and it should be recalled, and it's worth recalling that there is there are rules that they are bound to under international customary law. right, in the area of refugee protections. So all the members must be mindful of that and act accordingly. Secondly, keeping in mind, the humanitarian aspects of this ongoing and long-term crisis, I would suggest that the BIMSTEC members consider, for example, why not create a special fund among the BIMSTEC members where they support each other financially, and um, that money will go to alleviate the suffering of the Rohingya, but others, refugees, stateless persons around the region, right? And finally, I would say that, but this is a broader point. This is a broader point. Um, why not? I would advocate, suggest to think tanks, civil society organizations, and so on in the region to think about developing evaluation and monitoring tools in line with the SDG 16 in particular, as a way of just tracking and encouraging and uh, a tool for dialogue between the members and between civil society and their respective states and so on. Um, these are three concrete ways I think that we can proceed, more specific to the Rohingya, but also more broadly for the region.
I think these are wonderful suggestions, and I think creating a fund, that is a very, I think, noble thought, and that is actually going to bring some amount of, I think, cohesion, some amount of policy, some amount of policy way to create certain policies. I would like to thank you so much, Dr. Ramcharan, for raising some pertinent points which throw proper light on the current status. And I think this issue requires continuous deliberations till sustainable solutions are worked out. With this thought, I think we come to the end of our time. So I would like to thank you again, and a very good evening to everyone.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and all the best with the summit and your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.